Hi everybody, this is Judy Parcell again, and welcome to my studio. Today I thought I would talk about keeping a workbook. And that might sound like very dry and boring, but I can assure you that it will save you time, information, money, and mainly frustration. So I'm going to show you my workbook, the one I recommend, and I'm not sponsored by any of these people, I'm just going to show you. So this is Canson. I have 7 by 10 inch. It is mixed media paper. That means that I can put on acrylics, watercolor, pen and pencil. And these are very reasonable. I also like the fact they're bound together, and this works very good for me. Now in that workbook, I keep samples of experiments I've done. I experiment with a lot of products because I guess I'm just a curious individual. And here's an example. I found these, and I don't even know if I'm going to say them right, Akusea Japanese watercolor pen brushes on YouTube, and I was fascinated with them, and I bought the smallest set I could. I always start out with a small set. I don't buy the ginormous ones because if I'm unhappy, I'm stuck with those. So in this experiment, I wrote what I learned and discovered, and I put samples to the side of how they appear, trying the different things. And I was pretty pleased with that. Some of the stuff they demoed on YouTube, it did not turn out that way, but there is a use for these, and I'll determine on whether I want to expand my collection or not. But anyway, this is one idea, and I would stick it in my workbook. Also, I need to say, I did this on cardstock, because a lot of my art I created on cardstock, and it'll tell me what the true colors are, too. That's really important. I want to talk about keeping color charts of everything that you have. Sample color charts. Here is a color chart, and each of these pigments was painted on watercolor paper. I want to know how that pigment is going to look on the surface that I'm going to be painting it on. That just is logical to me. These are Yarka Russian watercolors. I like these because they are very intense and they have a place in some of my art. Another media I work in is alcohol ink, and I made this little sample sheet on graphics plastic paper. You can do it on Yupo or whatever. Yupo's too expensive for me, and this works just as well. Again, I can look at this and see what it's going to look like on that particular surface. Alcohol inks work best on non-porous surfaces like glass, acetate, ceramic, and they do work good on canvases too, because let's face it, gesso's got a lot of plastic in it. So that works great. Anyway, I do that for all of my alcohol ink markers, all of my colored pencils, all my watercolored pencils. I keep sample charts of those. And I'll show you just briefly my Ohuhu. And those are numbered, and that's how I keep them. And again, they're on plastic paper so I can see how they're going to look. My watercolor pencils, I do the same thing. I put down the pigment, and then I wet it in another bar, and then I can see how it looks with water, I can see how it looks without water. All this is done ahead, and I don't have to go, well, is that going to work out okay on this project? I want to know now. So the workbook is really good for information. I want to talk about keeping an inventory. Oops, sounds boring also. But if you experiment like I do in a lot of different media, this is going to save you time also. I want to know what I have in my inventory of supplies because I don't want to reach for something and I don't have it. I also live 17 miles from the nearest town, and they don't really have an art shop here until recently, and then but before that I was shopping online. So I want to know how many pens I have, how many brushes I have, how many pencils I have, and what kind of supplies I have, palette, so on and so forth. My paints, my markers, my inks, my canvases, and my papers. What have I got? I've got to know what I've got in stock. And we went over the color charts already. And then one thing that's really important is I keep the information for my pigment-based markers, like the Pitt pens. Are they oil-based, water-based, alcohol-based? Off the top of my head, I don't know unless I refer to my book. So again, this saves me frustration and time, and also making possible boo-boos in my art. This little work chart, I'm welcoming you to do a screenshot of it and download it and print it off. And it's kind of a information for how to build your workbook. Now, there are people that only specialize in oil paints. This might be overkill. As a matter of fact, I think it would be. But it depends on what you're doing. So this information is for those of you that are like me, that love to experiment. Thanks again for coming to my studio, and I'll talk to you later.